Aloha, friends. I'm Dorina.
And I'm Sean.
And we
are
are the Global Glory Chasers.
If you listened to our Walk, Run, Soar podcast in the past, we are so thrilled to have you back. And if you're new around here, welcome. Our podcast got a little makeover this summer. You can count on the same refreshing interviews and encouraging reflections, but with a twist.
As we launch into season 3, join us for an adventure chasing God's glory as we eat, pray, and run. Sean and I are hosting conversations with athletes, artists, chefs, and authors about food, culture, travel, books, and faith. This is a podcast about learning to chase God's glory in our everyday lives. You can expect a thoughtful quote, an engaging interview, and a little prayer.
Welcome to season 3, episode 1.
We're here for it, and we hope you are too. I believe we are called to be glory chasers. You might be wondering, what's a glory chaser? Actually, I first was introduced to this phrase by one of our friends, Mitchell Lee, who is a pastor back in Maryland, and he was preaching about this idea of being a glory chaser. And from this sermon, I was so inspired that I started to adopt this phrase as kind of a theme for my life, chasing God's glory. In Exodus 33:18, Moses says to God, "Please show me your glory." He was desperate to see evidence of God's presence or God's glory. And God answered, "I will make all my goodness pass before you and will proclaim before you my name, the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious and will show mercy on whom I show mercy." Most of us would like to experience God's glory in a very real way, but we're not exactly sure how to do that. And that's why we are inviting you to join us on a journey of discovery. Think of it like a wild experiment or a treasure hunt, maybe an expedition or a new trail for all of us to traverse. As you journey along, Sean and I are here to serve as Sherpas for you. Sherpa is a word that's used in the triathlon world to refer to the person who's usually a trusted friend or a family member who accompanies an athlete to a race. And the Sherpa is the one who makes sure that the athlete has everything they need. They gather maps, study routes, help prep meals, fill up water bottles, and pack snacks. And the Sherpa is tasked with getting the athlete safely home. And so through these next 12 episodes, we will be challenging you to chase after God's glory alongside us. We will be sharing conversations with friends who are also learning to chase his glory through their kitchens, their neighborhoods, and with their families. And so here's a little quote to get you thinking on this theme. In the midst of your activities, remember that Jesus is at the bottom of the laundry basket. He's under the car hood. He's in the line of figures you're tallying and in the booth you are serving as you refill coffee cups. Use even those times to sing a hymn, quote a scripture, and breathe a word of thanks to the one who loves you. Johnny Erickson Tada in A Spectacle of Glory. Welcome back, friends. I'm your host, Dorina Lazo Gilmore-Young, and I am so excited that you are here with me today for season 3 of my podcast, and actually a little bit of a pivot, a new branding to our podcast. We are the Global Glory Chasers. Eat, pray, run is kind of our theme. And so we're not getting rid of the running aspect, but we are also incorporating some larger conversations about culture, about food, about travel, and about community. And I am thrilled to have my friend Lucrecia Berry with me here today. I thought it would be very apropos to have her as my first guest because she's been partnering with me on this project that we're going to be talking about a little bit today, and really just has given so much fuel and encouragement to the Global Glory Chasers. So Lucrecia, I just want to welcome you. She is a mama of 3 girls. She is married to Nathan. She's also a writer for Encourage, and she is the president and founder of Brownicity. So I wonder, Lucrecia, could you just start us off? Tell us about what season of life you're in.
Well, currently, I feel like I'm in a season of not enough hours in the day and not enough energy for the hours. that I do have in the day. So currently, yeah, because I'm a writer and I am co-authoring a book right now. And then I have actually a children's activity book that launches in January. So we're doing beginning the publicity and marketing for that. So I do that work at home, but then I also teach an elective at a high school. So on Monday and Wednesdays, I go to the high school and I get to teach high school students and I get to work with teachers. I'm having a lot of full days. There's carpool with the children and then taking the children to all of the things. My favorite thing to do is spend time with my favorite person in the world, who is Nathan Berry. And then there's Brownicity. It is a learning community and it's for people who want to learn, but maybe you don't have access. Like, you're not going to go take college courses, or maybe you don't work at a company that pays for you to take courses. And so we consider ourselves a learning community for the community. And we offer courses that help foster racial healing, justice, and belonging.
I love it. Well, a couple things from what you shared. I mean, first of all, I'm a girl mama too. We both have three girls. So we are on that journey of mothering together. And I love the organization Brownicity. And actually, you and I have gotten to know each other through both being writers for Encourage. But I have mentioned this perhaps before, that I love also that my family has gotten to know you as a teacher and as an educator. And we took your course, What Lies Between Us. I know that's the name of your workbook as well. So we took that course. I think we're in your first group in that fall of 2020. We took it with, my husband, Sean, and then my three girls who were engaging at different levels and learning levels and stuff too. But it made a huge impact on us as a family, and even just inviting us into conversation together about race and about history and about skin tones and all those things. So I'm grateful that I've gotten to be a part of that as well. And I know Brownicity does a lot more than, just that one single course. So tell us a little bit more, unpack it for us. What are some of the ways that Brownicity is moving in the world today?
I do want to explain that funny word, Brownicity, that it's a combination of two words, brown and ethnicity, or brown and ethnicity. And brown represents the melanin that we all have. And then ethnicity, well, some of us have less melanin, some of us have more melanin. And then ethnicity means that which we have in common. And so Brownicity kind of means, we're many hues, but one humanity. And we hold this space to, address, how we have been categorized into a racial caste system or a racial hierarchy. And it has damaged us, like all of us. And so we hold this space to learn about the history and context of race for the purpose of moving forward in healing and to create what we know is possible, to create something better for healing humanity. Initially, we were offering lots of courses live and in person, but of course that limited us to only our area, because I'm a mom. I can't travel and take my kids for, several weeks at a time. So then in 2019, we launched an online learning community. And then that made our courses accessible all over. And of course, that was just in time. We didn't know that COVID was coming and everybody was going to have to do so much online anyway. Yeah. And so we offer courses like What Lies Between Us, which is kind of a foundational course to give you a basic understanding. We offer courses like Be Kids for Kids, and it's Let's Learn About. So it gives children language and understanding to be able to talk about their skin tone and being in one community, even though we look differently than each other. We have courses and webinars and seminars about like the brain, how racism has impacted how we think. So history courses. So we try to focus on empowering people to be kind of analytical, to be curious, to be critical thinkers, again, for the sake of healing. I think it's Maya Angelou who used to say, when we know better, we can do better. So it gives people a choice to kind of not maintain the normal, which is harmful. So that's what we do. And people can become a member. So you can join and become a member of the learning community. And then you can access all of the courses that are inside the membership. And it's also a great way to just support our work financially, or you can purchase individual courses. One of them is Global Glory Chasers. So
Okay, well,
we're going to get to that.
I want to talk about that in a minute, but I just have to say it has been such a joy for me, just as a friend of yours and as a fellow writer, to see this thing grow. And I think I may have mentioned this before. I keep thinking of this analogy of Noah building the ark. I feel like you built the ark and it was like, you didn't know what was coming. You did not know the storms and the rain that was going to come in 2020, but God enabled you to figure out how the platform would work, and just put this passion in you for so long of being able to educate people in this area. And then our country desperately needed it. Well, I mean, we've needed it for a long time, but there was a perfect storm.
But then they realized it. Yeah.
Right. And so it's been exciting, I think, for me to watch that. Like I said, I got to be a part of the community as well, but also to watch it from the outside. And even in my own friend group, like friends from college, friends from our church, people that I've met at other conferences, or other writers who have gotten involved in your community. And so then there's this mutual language of us being able to talk about, you know, things that we've learned in the community, in the courses, you know, some of the things it's like, oh, I saw my friend Shannon popped up on the Instagram, and she's a dear friend in real life who goes to my church, who's just adopted a baby, and she was on Brownicity, you know? So I love the way that God has brought together those connections through what you've created, really in faith, not knowing what it was going to look like.
That's right. And sometimes sometimes I still am not sure in terms of like, and I just am so grateful for a team that has had to, if they weren't already comfortable with, okay, this is organic and we're not trying to create something that, like, we're not trying to create something that is like something else. And so I can't say, well, you know, the next thing we're going to do, well, you know, after step 5 comes step 6, because, you know, that's normal. But it essentially has been, okay, I essentially started answering people's questions, and then that evolved into a course. And then that evolved into more people, like it stoked people's curiosity across the country. And then so that evolved into make this accessible beyond, you know, my reach. Oh, and now we even train people how to teach the course. And so I'll see people saying they're taking this course, and I'm thinking, I'm not teaching it. Like, how are they taking the course? But there's people all over the country who we've trained, and they are teaching this course. And again, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, because in September, What Lies Between Us turns 5. We're going to celebrate all month. If you would have asked me, where do you want to be in 5 years? I would have said, well, I'm just going to teach this little course here to these people in this neighborhood. And then I'm going on about my business. Like, that's it. Yeah, no idea. And because of the source of the invitation to do this work, because God has invited me, I dare not move out of sequence. You know, I dare not move out of step. So sometimes, you know, it doesn't make sense. Even when I was, you know, creating the learning community, people were saying, okay, you're a writer, like write a book, like write another book, or write your story. And I was saying, okay, I know that makes sense logically on the like writer publishing path, but what I am being instructed to do is to create, you know, a learning community, or, you know, a membership platform, and to create or to publish this children's activity book that I created. And people gave me the craziest looks. Like, what are you doing? And I can honestly say, I don't know. And I'm okay with that. So.
Well, that's one of the things I love about you, friend, too, is that you hold in tension that faithfulness, to what God has called you to, but also the open-handedness. Like, if we need to turn, or if we need to pivot, we're going to do that. And I think it speaks a lot to that creativity, but also, and, you know, this is what Global Glory Chasers is all about. It's really about tracing God's glory in our lives and seeing where he is leading us, where he is showing us glimpses of his glory and pointing others to that faithfulness. So I think you're just such a great testimony to that. It's very inspiring to me personally. And I love kind of hearing some of the behind the scenes of how it all came together. Let's talk about Global Glory Chasers. Let's give it a little bit of behind the scenes. I want to let you start off with kind of your part of the story, because it's so fun how God brought it together. And then for both of us, I think, you know, we just had an affirmation of like, yes, this is the next direction, the next path.
You posted on social media about something your family was doing with, books and food and interaction, just a whole learning experience that I was intrigued about and was wishing that I could just come to your house, honestly, like, why don't we live closer? Like, I just pick up my family and come to your house and participate as well. And I remember commenting on that. And so then you said, oh, okay, well, we're working on something and we will share it with the world later. And then short time after that, I got a question, what's the best resource, or, you know, how do you go about creating a membership site like Brownicity? And I was chuckled because I'm like, okay, here I am flying by the seat of my pants. And now I'm the experts sought after, like, oh, let me tell you how to do this. Not really. It is never my intention to, like, you know, hold this thing, you know, that has been handed to me, like, hold it like for me, like, oh, this is just for me. You know, I've always known that this is for, you know, whomever fits. And so when you asked, you know, I remember thinking like, gosh, I wish he was going to do that with Brownicity. It's so on brand. Like, we make such a good match. And so then as I shared the, you know, oh, this is how I learned how to do this. This is who you should follow. I'm thinking, I hope this isn't offensive, or I hope I'm not, you know, being intrusive or whatever. And I said, oh, but we'd love to have you do that through Brownicity if you want to give it a try. And, you know, quickly sent off the message.
Oh, I love this. I love your version of it too. It kind of,
tell your side.
Well, it shows just how God works behind the scenes too, especially when it comes to collaboration. So yeah, I'll tell a little bit of our side, and especially for new listeners who are like, well, what in the world is Global Glory Chasers, and are trying to figure this out. So to back up to what Lucretia described, this came out of a pain point that in 2020, we had to cancel a lot of our trips. We had been saving money for several years to take our kids on a trip to Europe. And we had, you know, tried to reschedule and ended up trying to go to Hawaii, but that had to be canceled because of COVID. And so we had a lot of disappointment, honestly. And it was over Christmas break that I was like, oh goodness, I have my kids for 3 weeks and now we've canceled all the trips. What are we going to do with ourselves? And so it grew out of this fun conversation that actually my husband, Sean, initiated, because he knew we were supposed to be getting on the plane the next day to go to Hawaii. And he said, well, what if we bring Hawaii to the kids? And his proposal was, oh, you know, why don't we order some Hawaiian barbecue and watch a movie or something like that? But my kids got wind of it and we started talking. Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, let's get out our Hawaiian clothing. Maybe we can talk to Nana and Papa, because I know they have music. My dad is actually from the islands. And so we wanted to include them. And then it was like, well, what foods could we make? We did order some food. I started to post it on Instagram just kind of for fun, like, hey, this is what we're doing over our break. And from that got such an overwhelming response from people like, what are you doing? How are you doing that? What are the recipes? You know, what are the books you're using? That kind of stuff. And a friend of mine who's always is good at encouraging me with new projects, her name is Stephanie Bryant. Actually, she's also an Encourage writer. She said, Dorina, this is like zone of genius. Like, you need to teach people how to do this. I think people are interested, but they don't know how to do it. And what if you built something that resourced them so that they could do it at home? So really it was kind of off of her suggestion. A little bit of background, like my mom is a teacher and she taught cultures of the world as her social studies curriculum that she wrote. And she did that for 30 plus years. So I grew up in this environment where I was constantly helping my mom, learning dances, you know, reading books, listening to music. She was a folk dance teacher. I didn't really realize it until that moment and talking with Stephanie and other people, like, that's not what everybody grew up in. This is something that I could offer to them that could help instigate that. So we started exploring. We didn't even know what we were doing. And Lucretia, you kind of described that phone call. I just reached out to you, I think on Voxer, and, like, help me out. Where do I go if I wanted to start a membership, even not sure if I'm going to do that? And I did get off of that conversation with you feeling in my heart like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool if we could partner somehow with Brownicity? Because I know we share these values, and I know that you've built this great platform, and I'd love to, bring along some of my audience as well. I was like, no, but that's too bold. I don't know if I should ask her that. I mean, she's worked so hard on this. Like, that's kind of, to just like insert myself and say, oh, by the way, can I contribute to this thing that you've built? So I didn't say anything. Ashamed to say I was not brave in that moment, but the Lord was working on your heart, as you already shared, and then invited. And I was like blown away, because that was just a little glimmer of a dream that I thought, oh, maybe even in the future, I could somehow partner with her. But I've got to figure out all this back end stuff. And then you and Brownicity and your amazing team has said, no, we've figured out the back end stuff. Come along, provide the resources, provide the stuff that, you're good at and your expertise, and let's build this. So let's explain what happens if somebody wants to become a part of specifically Global Glory Chasers. How does it work on your end for that?
Right. So Global Glory Chasers has its own course. So someone would go to join.brownicity.com, and then they would see all of these courses. And one of those is Global Glory Chasers. And I think it's even in the kids and family section. And so you click on Global Glory Chasers, and then you would enroll that way. So it's a monthly thing, and you can sign up for a month, and then you can stay for multiple months, or you can try it out. I think it's $12.97.
$12.97. Okay, I always forget the 7. $12.97 per month.
That's right.
And every month, what we do is we feature a different culture, a different country, and we invite you into that experience. So I like to say traveling the world from the comfort of home. So you don't travel to France, literally getting on a plane, but we're going to travel to France with my family. We're going to, learn how to make creme brulee and beef bourguignon, and we're going to watch Julie and Julia, or maybe it's Beauty and the Beast if you have younger kids. And I'm going to resource you with some books, a list of books, not, Google French books where you have hundreds and hundreds of options, but a curated list that we've put together of books that we have read, that we have vetted, that we know what age groups they are appropriate for. And so that's really what Global Glory Chasers is all about. And it's evolved through this process of working with Lucretia and Brownicity. So I love that collaboration. I'm all about it. So how about for you? Now, one of the fun things for me is that I've got to actually watch your family engage. And I wonder if you could tell me any stories about maybe some of the activities you've done with your family.
Well, first, let me say that our family loves this because it is something that we get to be intentional about together. Because, when you have a family of more than 2 people, oftentimes, people have their own individual things. I know our family, our children have different interests, and then, we gather together at dinner time for the most part. And then beyond that, we're not together a lot, or we're not working on a project or something together. And we love this because it brings us all together, at least for the cooking part. and our children really like that. I'm a little intimidated by cooking. I cook, but this is like, oh, now I'm cooking dishes from other countries. Oh my goodness. But it's fun. If it doesn't come out right, we don't know. So it's great. And so when we got to that, my husband has Italian heritage. And so I followed your example. You interviewed your mom, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And well, first of all, I have never, when I was telling people about her recipe for meatballs, I have never cooked meatballs, heard of meatballs that make sauce made that way. So I'm not even going to give it away because you should come into Global Glory Chasers and see what I'm talking about. And so even when I was sharing with people in my family who are cooks, they were so leaned in and interested. And I'm like, that is the best meatballs I have ever had in my whole entire life. Like it was so good. Anyway, and so because my family is multi-ethnic, my husband is Italian and some other things as well. And of course, in our country, because of our racial caste systems, our children will be seen as Black for the most part, like, oh, you're Black or you're biracial, but never, there's no question or curiosity about their ethnicities. And so then we at home are very intentional about them understanding their ethnicities, having some real connection to it. And so then we set up an interview with their Italian great grandmother and Italian grandfather, my husband's dad. And we just wrote, I prepared some questions, and I thought it was funny because this is so me, the teacher. So, I set up the interview and everything. And this is so my husband. He's the social butterfly, the party person. So he's all like, oh, like complaining that we have to gather and do this thing. And the children, they just go along. And so we get into it, and I could tell that my husband's grandmother, or, our kid's great grandmother she was a fountain of history and information. She was sharing things that my husband did not know, that my husband's dad did not know. It was phenomenal. And they all enjoyed it. Once the ball got rolling, and then everybody was having a good time, and I just walked away and started taking pictures. That's what I love about Global Glory Chasers, is because it's like, it helps us hold space to do this, on a monthly basis. And even, last month, which was July, Haiti, it flew so quickly, but I'm like, we printed out our stuff. So we got to circle back around to Haiti, but our kids are asking like, wait, we didn't do Haiti, and they are paying more attention. So even in the news, my daughter says, she goes, she's telling us about what happened in Haiti. And so then she's saying, okay, yes, we got to send Miss Dorina some money. Okay. And so that's, if you're listening, that's a whole other connection.
Yes.
And she goes, Mom and Dad, send a lot, because,
I love it.
because it's really bad. But see how they are connecting, intentional. So it takes something that could be very abstract, and then it brings it right into your home, and you have these real connections. And most of us, in our country, in the United States anyway, are various versions of multi-ethnicity. Yes. And we just haven't been afforded opportunities to kind of touch and connect to, or celebrate, or express our multi-ethnicity-ness.
I love that.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think it's neat to hear how this plays out, because I'm creating the resource list, and my family, we shoot a video each month where we kind of teach a little bit about that culture, and we point people in the right direction as far as those resources. But then it's really up to the family of how they're going to use it. And even individuals could use it too. I've heard of some who are, maybe not able to travel, who are singles or who are seniors, who even can use it. So it doesn't have to just be a family, but it's neat to hear that your family pressed into that interview part of it and got to discover more things about grandma and about your family history and your legacy. That's so beautiful. I interviewed my mom on Instagram Live as part of the month, but just trying to instigate more of those conversations. And I think for me, in being the creator and working alongside my husband and my kids, part of our goal is that not that you have to follow this like a syllabus, or that you have to do all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, but that you could take some of those ideas and then make it your own. And so maybe it is, crossing the street and interviewing your neighbor who is from Indian descent. Or maybe it's going to a local Chinese restaurant and ordering from that restaurant and asking a couple questions of the owners. Yes. I think there's a lot of room for that in this.
And even so, for example, and you mentioned singles, but also teachers. Teachers snatch this up because you've done all of the work. The very first month was the Philippines. And so when we had our Brownicity team meeting, we had Filipino food for our team meeting. So again, it helps us to be intentional.
Well, if people are interested, I'll give a little bit more information at the end of the broadcast about Global Glory Chasers. But I do have a couple more questions I want to ask you, Lucretia, while I have you here.
Okay.
I know that you are a TEDx speaker, and I actually have listened to your TEDx talk several times, actually, and used it as a resource in my own life, my own family. But I want to hear about that experience. Tell me about how in the world you got to the TEDx stage. And even, tell our listeners a little bit about your theme, what you talked about for that.
And again, it's another God story. I like to do a TED Talk was on my bucket list. I don't even know. And to me, to even say that, to do a TED Talk was on my bucket list, like that's so bold. Like, who do you think you are? You can do a TED Talk, And I remember the year before I was on the TED stage, a bunch of us, like probably half our church, had gone to hear our pastor do a TED Talk in Charlotte. And so, that was my kind of real life connection to a TED Talk. It happened to be on my birthday that year. So I just made a big deal out of it, like, oh, this is how I'm celebrating my birthday, is going to that TED Talk. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, I want to do this one day, maybe in 5 to 10 years, I will do a TED Talk, when I am ready. And so there comes a point when you're listening to like all the TED Talks, I think it's about 12 that day that you go here. And then, but they tell you, like in the break, they tell you about like, they encourage people to do a TED Talk, and it has to be an idea. And they kind of tell you, this is what we're looking for. And, different people around me touching me saying, you should do a TED Talk, you should do a TED Talk. And I remember I could hear resonating in my spirit, I kept hearing, if we don't keep them in the dark, our children will light up the world. Mm-hmm. If we don't keep them in the dark, our children will light up the world. And it kept playing in my head. And at one, and I'm like, okay, I got it. The whole idea is that, if we don't want race to matter, then we have to talk to our kids about skin tone and race. Our children must be informed. We can't continue to raise our children pretending like we live in a just society. It's doing them a disservice. And when we equip them with language and understanding, we teach them the history. That doesn't make them feel bad. It makes them equipped. So then they can make choices. And again, like light up the world, make better choices, create what a colorblind generation has not been able to create, solve problems a colorblind generation has not been able to solve. And that's essentially what my TED Talk was about. And that was kind of my passion anyway. I was immersed in a community, in a multi-ethnic community, and I would get lots of questions and so I felt like it was constantly, fielding questions and answering questions and kind of putting together little teaching events to help parents be able to talk to their children in ways that, like, about a very tough conversations that adults typically don't understand. I'm like teaching adults so that they can, in a way that they can be able to teach their kids, because that's the tricky part. Like we have to teach them, but you don't want to pass on trauma as you're teaching the kids. And so I found myself kind of immersed in that already and passionate about that. And then as it kind of came together, like I had to pull that together, TED Talk. And the process is arduous. If I'd known that I was going to have to jump through so many hoops and it was going to be so many steps, I would have said, nah, no, thank you. It starts kind of at the beginning of the year, like January or February. You have to apply to audition. You jump through all these hoops from January until October when you get on the stage. And so it goes from like a massive amount of people to just 12 people getting on the stage. And then there's coaches along the way to help you make your talk, as best that it can be. And here's a little funny story. So if anybody goes to watch my TED Talk, you are going to see me rubbing my hands a lot. And I was freezing cold. It was so cold. So I'm rubbing my hands a lot. So that's what's happening. And people go, were you nervous? I wasn't nervous because the process was so long. I was just ready, and I was ready for it to be done. I was like, oh, finally, I'm delivering the baby. That's what I felt.
It's really intriguing to hear that behind the scenes because I've watched several TED Talks. I feel like they are just so impactful and powerful. And even in watching yours, I love how this is something that in a lot of ways was launching what was to come with your membership, with gathering people for community, with teaching these different courses. But you can just see how it was like those initial seeds that had to kind of start their blooming. And I have another friend, actually, Marcy Pusey is her name, and she just recently went through the whole kind of TED process that you're describing last year. And so same thing, you know, she was developing her talk, coaching, joining hands with other people. And it's like, wow, this whole thing, it's interesting because it's actually way more collaborative than it comes off. Because when you just see someone on the stage, you think, oh, well, this is just like, you know, this amazing polished speaker who just happens to be sharing their thesis for the day. But it's actually a lot of people pouring in and shaping those messages, you know, to get to that point.
Yes.
So
quite a production.
With this podcast, with Global Glory Chasers, part of my goal is really to talk about this idea of being a glory chaser. In other words, not that we'd be chasing glory for ourselves, but that we would actually be looking to God's glory and how it is working in the world and in our individual lives. And so we've already been sharing stories about connections and collaboration and how God has grown these seeds within us for our passions. But I'm just wondering if you have any stories of something in your life right now, in this season, maybe this week or this month, where you have seen God's glory.
I told you that I am a high school teacher and I teach a course, Anti-Racism 101. And right now, you know, in our country, a lot, like teaching about race and talking about race is under attack. And unfortunately, there's like a lot of mis and disinformation that is getting a lot of attention. And so I see God's glory in that, okay, God invited me to this work. And so where there's vision, there's provision. Even though I have experienced some attacks, I'm in this amazing school community where, you know, the director is like so certain that this is what we should be doing. And this is very helpful for the students. And, you know, I thought that, well, because of all of the noise and chaos and distraction that is happening right now, I thought nobody's going to enroll in my course because it's an elective, you know. And yeah, the opposite happened. It more than doubled. And so for the first time since I developed the high school course, I'm actually teaching 2 sections of the course, and I'm blown away. And I always ask the question, you know, why did you enroll in this course? Like, why did you do that? And their answers give me so much hope. The answers take me back to the TED Talk. You know, if we don't keep our kids in the dark, they will light up the world, because they instinctively know that if they understand, then they can help their community or help their generation do better than what they have inherited. I was shocked about the enrollment, multiplied enrollment. You know, I was like, why were you shocked, Lucretia? Like, this is God's glory. You know, this is God. And, you know, that's not going to say, okay, here's this path I'm going to put you on and for it to go nowhere.
So that's a great story of his glory. And, you know, I'm going to press in here a little bit because I know there is this controversy going on in our country, and especially in Christian community. There's this fear right now about what are they teaching our kids in school, what's happening in the public schools, and a lot of talk about critical race theory. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people don't really know what it is. And so as you are teaching this course, can you help us? I mean, if there's a person out there who has that question, like, oh, well, is she teaching that? Give us a little bit of maybe just the overview of what it looks like from your vantage point of what you're teaching or why that's important.
Essentially, this is what I've heard a lot is, you know, like talking about race or teaching about race and racism makes white kids feel bad. And yeah, if I am a parent of a white child, like, no, I don't want my kids to learn, you know, history or learn in ways that, you know, will harm my child. But, you know, in my classroom, and when I say majority, I mean the majority are white kids who feel the opposite. Like they feel they want to be informed. It's like they feel cheated because they don't know, because they haven't been taught, you know, how race works and how racism works beyond our popular, superficial understanding of race. You know, some of their answers when they ask that question, I mean, so much of it is about, I am curious, I have questions, please answer, you know, my questions, you know, otherwise they feel cheated and robbed. And so, you know, we have just this summer, I, you know, met daughter of someone I was working with someone, and she goes, she said, you came to the school the same year that I graduated. And she said, I wish that I had taken your course. You know, I wish that you were there when I was there. She said, I had to wait till, you know, I was in college to learn this. And she wasn't happy about that. And even the director of the school has said, students have said to her, why aren't we learning like true history or more than just this history? Because they feel cheated and robbed. They feel like they feel misinformed, like someone is kind of, you know, playing a cruel joke on them. So back to what, you know, my course is about, or anti-racism 101 is about. It really is about understand the policies, the practices, the fake science, and the erroneous beliefs that went into creating a racial caste system that is at the core of why we see currently so much disproportionality in, you know, in opportunity gaps. We see a wealth gap. We still have segregated neighborhoods and segregated schools. And when you don't understand the history, so, you know, even when I look at you, Dorina, you hold a whole story and a whole history. We cannot look at the present without seeing history. But if I don't know that history, I will just make it up. I will just come up with a meaning. Like I will try to put you in my limited understanding, like, okay, you look like, you know, maybe this is your background, or you got here because of this. But, you know, when I'm having conversations with my students, you know, again, it's like someone, when they learn the content, it's like someone is putting all the pieces in place. I use this analogy when, you know, if you were young and you did the connect dots, and so you go, you know, from, you know, 1, 2, 3, and you're making a picture with the connect the dots. And so I say to my students, I say, well, was the picture already there, you know, before you connected the dots and drew the picture? And it's like, yeah, the picture was already there. And I said, okay, so all we're doing is giving you the dots. So giving you as many dots as you can so you can see a full picture. Because if you only have like 5 dots and you need 100, you cannot get the picture. And so I have students take the class multiple times. I have students say, I learned more history in this class than I learned, you know, in all my years of going to school. It's not about making people feel bad. It's just learning history, and people feel informed. They go, we have a saying that says, okay, be hard on systems and soft on people.
Oh, I love
because
that.
we are people who are impacted by systems. You know, we don't exist in a vacuum. You know, we've inherited, like we swim in a river, or we swim in the waters that, you know, someone else created, or we live in a home that somebody else built. And so if it isn't working for us now, then we have to build something better. But you can't do that if you're not able to critically see and analyze and examine the things that aren't working for everybody. Now, the thing about young people, students, high school students, and even younger, they're not trying to protect any egos. They're not trying to protect any political agendas. They don't have anything to be afraid of, because like, I'm their teacher. I am not going to hurt them. Otherwise, they can't learn. I'm not there to traumatize them.
Right.
So it's just beautiful. Their minds, they're open. They learn how to have conversations better. They learn, even just this week, our second week was about learning to listen when you disagree. So.
Ooh, we need to teach that to adults, right? I need to sit in that class.
I mean, and essentially it's what lies between us, but extended over a whole year. And because we have a whole year, we get to go a lot deeper than what lies between us, but it's essentially the same component. So if someone's like, what is she teaching in there? You can just go onto Brownicity and pop in and see
what I hear you saying is we're helping the kids be able to connect those dots so that they can be educated. There's a desire for them to be educated. Also, they're asking questions. So we can't just shut down the questions. And I remember in us taking What Lies Between Us, we were learning about some of the history, and my girls are so curious, like, wow, Mom, did that really happen to Filipinos when they first came to this country? As we learned some of that, and that is not something in their history books, but it's meaningful to our family because we have Filipino American heritage. Not to say that just if you're from that certain group that you should know that history, but it was like, oh, well, that was like completely omitted or not covered in the curriculum that my kids have encountered, and even that I've encountered. I remember being a sophomore in high school, and we were studying some of the world wars, and the topic of the Japanese internment. It was one sentence in my history book. And I remember being so indignant about that, and partly because I have an aunt who's Japanese American, whose family experienced being in the internment camps. And going to my history teacher and just saying, like, this is one sentence in my book. Like, it's not giving people that breadth and that richness and that understanding of this hard thing that happened in history. And he really empowered me actually to do a research paper and then a presentation to the class, so that I could share some of that passion of what I'd learned with the class. But I remember that making such an impact on me, that here is my history book, and something that is significant, that's affected a whole people group, that it's like a passing sentence.
Right.
So I absolutely love what you're doing, and that your school, where you're working, is giving space for that type of discussion.
Yes. I am so grateful for the school that is giving space. Because here's the thing, and I see this when I go to the elementary classes, and with the elementary classes, I will read books to give them language about skin tone and, melanin. And Dorina, it's like they respond like they have been starved. So immediately when I've given them words and understanding, they want to talk all about everything about their skin and all the people with skin and this, like they're just like, oh, now finally someone has given us words to have these conversations and to ask these questions that we have been holding. And just, and simply just because we are, not holding space for the conversations, or we're not giving them language, doesn't make the questions go away. They still have the questions. And so here this woman comes in and reads and has a conversation for 30 minutes and gives them a exercise, and I'm in their 30 minutes. It's as if they have been immersed in it their whole lives. They can have sophisticated conversations. And the teachers have said that too. They said, before you came, I would not let my children, the students, talk about anything regarding skin tone or race, because they'd say, I'm afraid it could get crazy. But once they get language and understanding, then, the teachers relax, and the kids have these very mature conversations like, oh, we are out of construction paper that is, for such and such a skin tone. We need to order some more, so it's just, it becomes normal. Everybody's calm and relaxed. Nobody's uptight. So nobody feels bad. So I don't know what issue we can address and solve problems, for, by just not addressing it. Like that makes no sense to me. Yeah. I get this, that people could be afraid that there are teachers who are not doing this well. And if that's the case, then let's advocate for more teacher education. Like, let's get behind our teachers and give them more resources and more training, not shut our teachers down.
Yes. Oh, so good. Well, for anyone who's listening who maybe is involved in the education field or is a teacher, Brownicity provides those resources for you to learn. And so we're going to share that in our show notes. It's been so good to have you here, Lucrecia. Thank you for just sharing your life and your passion with us. And I know that you are a global glory chaser. So thanks for helping us kick off this season. One last quick question, because we eat, pray, run last season.
Yeah.
What is something that you love to eat?
Honestly, my medicine is dark chocolate covered cashews or dark chocolate covered almonds. My medicine.
Well, you can't see it here on the camera, but I have my little drawer right here at my desk with my
Mhm.
snacks, and there is always dark chocolate in there. So I say yes and
Ooh.
amen to that.
Yeah.
Don't tell the children.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, thanks again for being with us. And we look forward to just continuing to support you. Head over to Instagram, follow Brownicity and Lucretia
Mhm.
on Instagram, as well as hopping over to brownicity.com. All these things that we talked about, you can access through those
Yes.
two spaces. And
That's
I'll
right.
put those in the show notes as well.
Thank you for having me.
And so we're going to conclude our broadcast today with a little prayer. Join me. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity to come together today and to enter into your glory. I thank you for this conversation that we have had with Lucrecia about the organization Brownicity that you led her to found. I thank you for the good work that she is doing in the community. I pray that you would bless her efforts and her endeavors. God, I pray that as we go into this week, that you would show us glimpses of your glory, that you would show us that you are at work in all things, in all circumstances. And the times when we feel discouraged or weary, I pray that you would lift our heads and that we would be able to see you, whether it's in creation or in a conversation we have with our spouse. God, would you show us how to be glory chasers? And we pray this in Jesus' name, amen. Before we close, I just want to share a few more details with you about our new Global Glory Chasers membership. Global Glory Chasers is for the family that loves to discover and explore together. And we've done the work for you and curated all the resources you need so you can travel to a new country from the comfort of home each month.
Make it a Saturday night tradition or something to pull out on a weekday with no plans. Explore some new foods and settle in for a movie or book that might instigate some good family discussion. We want you to make this experience your own. This month, we are taking our Global Glory Chasers to the country of India.
Please head over to my website, www.dorinagilmore.com/GGC for Global Glory Chasers. You can also explore all the details of our membership over there. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my weekly Glorygram, which is a personal letter that I send out to you to stay in touch. Thank you for joining us for Season 3, Episode 1 of the Global Glory Chasers Eat, Pray, Run podcast. It's been a joy to serve you. Let's chase his glory together.